Alright guys, had to come again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. Drama going down last night with the meta potentially changing here in Black Ops 6 with big AR stepping in and potentially nerfing the Jackal significantly. The SMG players have decided another SMG is going to be what they use instead. Maybe the C9, the weapon that's effectively the MP5 of this year's game, has been used by the pros in scrims over the last couple of days. The pros aren't happy about it. The ARs are fighting with the SMGs. There is threatening, anyway, from X and others to break all the GAs and throw everything out the window. Drama elsewhere as well. Very much interested in your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I'd greatly appreciate it. Just starting out with this from Kels. That was kind of nice to look back on, really. The 2018 CWL Championship. There was lots of talk about this last night when this kind of came to light, really, discussing the current franchise era versus what was the case back then. Now look, sure, many of these matches were pretty damn one-sided because there's 32 teams here at the World Championship. There were good teams smoking bad teams. And that did happen. But at the same time, at least you got loads of different matches. It wasn't, the same old teams playing the same old teams and players again and again and again. There was the possibility for an underdog story. There was the possibility for a Cinderella run, which happens very frequently, to be honest, to at least some good placing for a team that was surprisingly making it to that point. There was COD on like all day, every day throughout the weekends. It was, and there were 2Ks, there were 5Ks. It was much more open, of course, the circuit than we have today. In my opinion, it was not better in every way, but it was better than what we have today, in my opinion. But yeah, just looking back at some of these teams, Unilad always cracks me up when I remember that they had actually a pretty damn good Call of Duty team. Some drama from yesterday. So, we're calling out here from Rafi, owner of the OpTic team, what's going on in the CDL. He says this: CDL owners want 3 employees made up of an editor, a social media intern, and a general manager that probably rosters teams based off friendship and wonders why there are only 3 relevant teams in the league, basically talking about FaZe, Thieves, and OpTic. So, Rafi says, effectively implies that these teams could do a much better job if they actually committed to trying to be a better team in some respects. Zinni isn't so sure this is, the perspective, because as Method says, I hate it when people say stuff like this. The players expect, or the players, everyone expects to get picked up, have been in the league multiple times before. It's almost like the Pro League is different gravy because pros just go run challenges and the cycle repeats. So, the idea, I guess, that Rafi's saying that the teams are often formed through friendship, Method says, well, it's just because the pros are the pros and they're running the challenges. But, Chris Radial says that when Zinni was dropped down to challenges in Cold War, he was then, losing to whoever, and to say that, a few tenured pros have come down and ran challenges, most of them get sent to the Shadow Realm. Zinni says maybe I was on, had a couple of beverages, so, because obviously he went back in and had a great stage after that, certainly the following season in Vanguard. Gunless, though, doesn't necessarily agree with Zinni's perspective and says this: disrespectfully, there are a lot of terrible players in the league. They don't even know how to win. They're just sitting there doing the bare minimum in terms of putting in work and collecting a paycheck. Now, look, I don't necessarily disagree, I don't necessarily disagree with this, but look, again, it's kind of a classic Gunless tweet. He's done this quite a lot over the last couple of years. Unfortunately for Gunless, it's just, he's not in the league at the moment. Obviously, he's had an opportunity last year and over the last couple of years, but if the league were to expand, maybe Gunless would get back in. Is Gunless wrong? No. But is it about relationships? Yes, to some extent. And if Gunless maybe had stronger relationships with some of the players still in the league, he might still be in the league. But of course, that's not where we are nowadays. So these discussions continue. Even Exceed gets involved and says this: I'm not here to join in the beef, but 80% of CDL pros that come down to challenges don't win anything. Now, is he wrong? I'm not necessarily... I think Exceed has a point to some degree, that there are pros who are falling out of the league, that are, the weaker players in the league. They come to challenges. What do they really do? Sometimes a lot, sometimes not that much. There are some players that are like the Challengers demons. They drop down and they run the little league, basically. But some players don't, to be fair. But as Zinni says, there are players that have done. Exceed, Brack, Neptune, Fellow, Arcetes, X, Asim, etc. And, plenty of other players that are notable that have won stuff in challenges. Now, obviously Exceed then says, well, there's a difference between coming down to winning once and running that. But obviously... you know, Hicksy was really making the point about, well, not that many players come down and win, and then, you know, this guy reels off a load of players that have come down and won, and then, you know, there's a bit of drama about it, isn't there? So it's a little bit confusing. Everyone was popping off on the timeline yesterday, and it actually continued here because Cap came in and said, you've got the top tier of players who consistently contend, then a tier of solid players who belong in the league, but probably aren't going to win anything barring a miraculous weekends, and then the rest. And, you know, he says, for argument's sake, you can probably assume 16 players in each tier. The last tier of players is probably interchangeable with Challengers players, but there are only a few rare exceptions where Challengers players are clearly better than the guys in that tier and deserve to be in the league over them, which is actually very well put. Like, if you look at the league, how many Challengers players are there that are going to be on Simp's level? Well, okay, basically 0. How many players are there on the level of, you know, maybe a player like a JoeDeceives or something, right? A player who's probably not absolutely upper echelon, but is probably in the mid-pack of someone who's not going to be dropped out of the league because he's too good for that. So, you know, it's an interesting perspective, I suppose, but the drama continued on that. It then continued here. So, Parasite said, how has Luna's not been in conversations? You know, good AR player, Challengers player, potential rookie for the league. He was in conversations last year, never happened. Apparently this year he's not really in the conversation. But as Parasite says, like, how's this guy not getting picked up when there are so many bad AR players in the league? And Clay says, well, hang on a second, name the bad AR players. So I don't have an issue doing that. So, and neither does Aches. Even Parasite says, these Falcons boys getting pooped on. But of course, Clayster is kind of going to imply that it's not like they're going to drop, let's say, one of their ARs or Roxas or something for Lunas. It's just not really going to happen. So, you know, Clayster then follows up with some beef here to Parasite and says, I hate people saying generic stuff, but being too scared of rocking the boat for their own self-gain. Say it with your chest if you feel there are so many bad AR players. So, you know, Parasite says, I'm not going to fall for the bait, like, I'm not going to list them out on the timeline. So, Aches basically decides to do it for him. Now, he doesn't actually list the names, but, okay, I think we can probably theorize what we're talking about here. So, FaZe, 2 greats, Drazah and Cellium. Thieves, 1 great, 1 good, that being Scrap and, of course, Ghosty. Carolina, 1 good, 1 good enough. I'm guessing that's going to be Slasher and then Vivid, you know, kind of in that conversation. Ultra, 1 good will be Beans, 1 good enough will be Insight. That's how I'd read it anyway. OpTic, 1 great, Dashy, 1 meh, Kenny. Now, whether you think Kenny's meh, so far he has been, sure. Miami, 2 good enough with both of their AR players over there. I mean, Lucky obviously did well at the major, and then they kind of mix it around a little bit with the rest of the guys, but Renkor's been good. So, you know, Rocket, 1 good, 1 ass. So, obviously, Paul X has not been great, but Geo's been good. Boston, 2 meh with Cammy and Awakening. Surge, 2 meh with Abuzah and Nastie. Cloud9, 2 meh is interesting. I think you can debate this because, you know, okay, Sib's been pretty meh so far. I think, you know, I think Sib could be good, or certainly good enough. Attach has been, I mean, if Paul X has been ass, Attach has been ass, respectfully. So, I mean, yeah. Then LAG, you get down to 1 meh, presumably Skyz, and then 1 ass in Priestahh. And then Falcons don't really merit too much discussion. So, you know, is H wrong? Not necessarily. I'm just, you know, I was a little bit confused because I think Clay makes a fair point to say to Parasite, like, hey, if you're going to say there's many bad AR players, let's actually talk about who they're going to be. But equally, do I think there are many bad AR players? Absolutely. You know, I think at the moment there is a big conversation to be had. I mean, Aches, I think, does a pretty good list here, to be fair. There's some debate I might have on some of these things, but I don't think he's necessarily all that wrong. Let's talk, though, about some of the gentleman's agreement drama, because here we go with Samuel Octane. Finally, the masses, or the eyes of the masses, have been opened. Hashtag GA the Jackal. So, the Jackal is the best gun in the game. It's the best SMG in the game, and it was dominating the major. Not that many teams were able to run 4 Jackals. They just don't have the versatility or the skill set to make that work. But some teams like FaZe, they could do it, and there is a discussion around whether the Jackal is too good to be kept into the game. Now, look, I miss the days where the SMGs were great at close range, and at longer range they had too much recoil and not enough aim assist to actually make it work. So you had to be strategic with the gunfights you took. For the last few Call of Duties, you know, you can just square up. Who cares? Just square up with the SMG and that's fine. You know, I don't think they should necessarily change the meta massively. I don't really mind, but I do think the game played better when the SMGs were closer range weaponry. That's my opinion. Maybe it's because I used to run an AR back in the day. Maybe I'm part of Big AR. Maybe I am a secret agent for Big AR. I don't know. But that's just my opinion on the way that Call of Duty should be done. It was the same with something like the VMP back in Black Ops 3. Good luck gunning someone with an M8 across the map with that. The MSMC in Black Ops 2, very same story. Dominant at close range, super fast and crisp handling. But at longer range, you're not gunning down an M8 or an AN-94. That's just how it's going to be. So there's some debate on what this should be, and Parasite even says it, that maybe the Sorg should be the meta weapon. That's what they should go for instead. I don't massively disagree. The C9 is not Cloud9. That is effectively the MP5 weapon that is in the game instead. And a lot of the pros as of yesterday, following the GA of the barrel attachment on the Jackal, have decided that they're going to use another weapon instead. So Drazah says, I can't take these sub-players serious. We take a few attachments off and they just switch to using the C9. So I thought this is a pretty funny outcome, really, because the ARs, Big AR, decided that they were going to get rid of a couple of the barrel attachments, the reinforced, the long barrel, whatever, like get rid of them and force them to use the alternatives. Turns out, yeah, this does make the gun significantly weaker. aBeZy says, if you give me my recoil springs, then I'll use the Jackal and I'll be kind of happy about it. Obviously, Drazah says, I'll give you whatever you want. And Nero says, yeah, sure, let's go for exactly that. So maybe that's what's going to happen here. But the Jackal was significantly weakened by the GA that the pros put into place to basically force them not to use some of the attachments so that it would better balance the aims and the Jackal. One other option, of course, would be just to bring back a better AR, right? Like instead of nerfing the Jackal, just because the pros have GA'd the M4, they've GA'd the Model L, they've GA'd that new Cypher gun that's coming, right? It's like, if they allowed those guns to be used, maybe the Jackal wouldn't need nerfing. Maybe it doesn't anyway, right? Obviously, it's a matter for debate. I also don't mind, like, from whatever I said about the SMG perspective, it's been a long time since we've had an SMG kind of dominated game. I don't know if you guys feel the same way. Like, it wasn't that long ago when, Vanguard, for example, the auto was just an absolute laser beam when compared to the MP40 a lot of the time. So I don't necessarily mind a game where the SMG is more dominant. But even Pred here getting in on the act and saying, look, the Jackal GA is horrendous. It's an AR world like always. Drazah found that pretty funny, CEO of OpTic or whatever in the replies. But yeah, what do you guys think about this in the comment section below? Because the SMG players have seemingly said, okay, the Jackal is bad without this. We're just going to use another sub where those GAs don't apply. We're going to use the C9. Maybe they could un-GA the Sorg and use that instead. I don't know what they're going to do. The reality is, it's a bit of a mess right now because the matches begin, I mean, what are we on Saturday? The matches begin next Friday. In just a few days' time, they are officially back in business. So, yes, Paul X says, all these GAs with no votes. I'm using whatever the hell I want, SMD. So, apparently, like, this is interesting as well, right? That Paul X reveals that apparently lots of these GAs are happening without the pros really agreeing to it. So, man, the GA drama never goes away, does it? Especially when Drazah's saying that we take a few attachments off, which kind of implies that, like, the ARs are making the call, right? And this is usually how it's been, that, well, it's not always the case, but if you just think about the way that the lay of the land is in Call of Duty, the older, more veteran players tend to be more AR leaning, and it's usually the younger, less experienced players that usually are the SMGs. Just, that's how it is. You can debate why, as you get older, you get slower, whatever it is, right? That's generally how it is. Usually, therefore, that means that the majority of the representatives in the Gentleman's Agreement chat are the captains of the team, and therefore often AR players. This has typically been the case with the likes of, Accuracy, Slasher, Clayster, Attach, among others. And even though that's slightly less true now with some of those guys retiring, it's still generally true, I would say. So that's why there's lots of talk about, SMG, AR propaganda, and JP gets involved in the discussion as well. So look, intrigued to your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Where do we go from here? That is a very good question. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.